I am Dian Griesel, also known as Silver Disobedience, and this is the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. And I'm beyond excited because we are recording this in iconic Manhattan Center, located on 34th Street and 8th Avenue. They have the home of the Hammerstein and Grand Ballrooms and amazing TV studios, and a lot of great music has been recorded here as well. So I'm very psyched to be here. And I'm even more excited, as if that's possible, because I have two great guests today. And we are going to be talking about models, mobsters, and manuscripts. And my guests are Ginni Conquest, who is a co-director at Wilhelmina Models for the Women's and Direct Divisions, and Anthony Solano, retired New York City Police Department squad commander. And they are going to tell us about their careers and how they ended up in this room talking about their manuscripts. So, Anthony, let's start with you.
Okay.
Okay. From the police department to writing crime fiction, and a lot of them. How'd this happen?
Well, after I had a business after I retired from the police department, and I had an investigative company, and I did that for 22 years, and I did that for 17 years in Midtown. I retired when I hit a certain age. I was 65, and I said I have to do something because I wasn't quite prepared to just shut down. So I decided that I would try writing a book, and I based that on because I thought that there were so many great mystery writers, Earl de Beggars, who did Charlie Chan, and the James Cain and Sam Spade and all of those, Dashiell Hammett and all those guys. I said they all had one thing in common: none of them were law enforcement people. So I said that should give me a voice. I should have some kind of credibility because I do have some experience in that world. So I coupled that with the experience I had with working organized crime when I was assigned to the DA's office out in Queens County, and I thought between the two areas, I should be able to weave together a story or two. As it turned out, I weaved together 7.
7 and counting. Now, Ginni, you book models in mega campaigns, worldwide campaigns, all day long. And then you somehow find the time. You're up to your 10th sexy romance novel. How are you doing it? Where's the inspiration coming from?
I really don't know. I maybe just day-to-day life experiences, and I have a very vivid imagination. So I wrap all of that, into one and create these stories for entertainment as an escape. And it's not only escape for my readers, it's an escape for me as well, from the day to day, So that's how that all came about.
Now you're both authors who came from very intense careers. Or, Ginni, you're still in your career, so you're still booking models all over the place, in big campaigns. Anthony, oh my gosh, the things you handled on the police force with New York City are mind-boggling, overwhelming. Some of the stories you've told me have really left me awestruck. I'm curious, when you're working on books, are you both drawing from your daytime jobs or jobs you had to build these characters?
Well, I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of both. I think you draw upon your life experiences, and that's how you create your characters, because let's face it, there are many, many characters that we come across in life. It's just a question, for me, it's just a question of taking those characters and sometimes combining several characteristics into one character from several different people. And then, of course, there are actual cases that I had worked with and different personality types in those cases, and that adds to another dynamic, to the books that I'm writing. I found that I like to tell more than one story when I write a book, and I try to tell several stories. And the reason I did that was really to sort of self-protect myself, because if somebody could pick up a book, read it, and not like it. I says, but if I go in with 7 different stories and sort of bring them all together at the end, the odds are they're going to like one of those scenarios that I put together. So they can't really pan the book altogether, and that's how I got to do that.
You know, it's a very interesting style that you have, and you have an interesting style too, Ginni. You get right into it. Like your first chapter, there's some scene that makes you say, "Woo, where's this going to go?" And Tony, your style is very unique in that you really do have multiple stories going on. And sometimes I read your books and I say, how's this all going to tie together? You know, you both say you write fiction. I want to know how much nonfiction is in your stories.
Well, for me, I have, I'm known right now for my rock star romance series. And that pretty much stems from my years in the early 90s of being a singer in my original rock band Spies here in New York. And it was my drummer's fault. He's like, you're writing all these romance novels. Why don't you write a rock star romance, write about what you know? So I was like, ding, ding, ding. You know, the alarm bells went off, and I'm now writing book 3 of a 6-book series, the Song of the Heart series. So that's pretty much near and dear to my heart. From those years of being a singer in a man's dominated world, pretty much, you know, back in the 90s especially. And it was great experiences. So I'm able to bring that realness to it. So it is fiction. The characters have nothing to do with any of the guys that I worked with or any of the bands we performed with. I've just created stories based off my own experiences. So it's been fun. So,
you know, that's kind of like what Tony said. You were talking about other writers who've written in the crime fiction genre. I find, you know, some of my favorite authors in those different genres are people who've been there and done that. Because the nuances of what you bring into a story, the character development is very different. And you really see that in your books, Tony, when you write about the different detectives and the dynamics between the detectives. And I don't think you would get that if you hadn't experienced it.
Yeah, well, that's true. You know, that's very, very true. Yeah, you know, the conversations that in my Sergeant Markey series,
yeah,
the conversations between Sergeant Markey and this Detective Von Hess that really don't have anything to do with the crime that they're investigating, those are conversations that people have had, you know, that I've had probably with others. So there is some, you know, facts to that. In discussing a homicide, well, perhaps, you know, the homicide happened this way. For argument's sake, the case of 2 in the trunk. Yeah, there were 2 girls in the trunk that we found. But you build upon that. You know, you add to that story to make it somewhat entertaining. And what you do is you add personalities of some of the characters that are involved in that particular homicide. Witnesses and family members and stuff like that. You kind of take those and you just embellish and you add to it. And you may draw upon somebody who had nothing to do with anything, just somebody in your childhood that you knew had certain idiosyncrasies about them. And you would incorporate that person into one of those characters that actually took part in this case.
I want to go back and forth on this. Ginni,
okay, yeah.
You know, are you drawing on particular characters and yourself, others? You know, they say a lot of fiction is autobiographical in different ways, and you know, and that autobiographical could be about the author's self, or as we're talking about, people you've encountered, or the merger, the myriad of personalities melded into one. What do you say, Ginni?
Well, for my characters in the Song of the Heart series, they are modeled after my favorite rock stars.
Who might those be?
Who might that be? The lead character, Bo Taggart, of my book series is pretty much modeled after Tommy from the band Kiss, the lead guitarist. And because I love him, I think he's such a solid, driven guitar player. So he influenced that character. For the singers, it was more Jeff Tate from Queensryche, formerly from Queensryche. You're laughing here.
I love it. Queensryche.
Yeah, all
Kiss.
my favorite. Kelly Hansen from Foreigner, Steve Perry, who's always been, forget it, since I was a young girl. I loved his voice. And the women in the book are all modeled after, say, Pat Benatar, Ann Wilson, Nancy Wilson, you know, just really strong characters, because the whole storyline is 6 guys on the trajectory to be the hottest rock band in the world clashing with 6 women who are on the same trajectory. And there's a love-hate relationship between both bands, and they get stuck now on a tour together, which neither band is happy about. It's their first tour out, and things happen. So, yeah, so.
Tony, you have a recurring character in your books, Fishnet?
Yes,
Fishnet. He's an intriguing detective, a rogue detective.
Yes.
Where'd that character come from?
Well, you know.
Not to put you on the spot.
No. You talk about characters. You know, to me, it's a little like method acting. You know, when you create characters, you are that character. At least that's the way I do it. I put my head in the role of whatever character, male or female, good or bad. I become that person as I'm writing this. And the actions that those people take, regardless how terrible they are, that's what I would do if I were that person. And that's how sort of my characters develop. Now, that doesn't say a lot about me, of course, but that's how I do it, and it seems to flow, and it seems to work. Now, Fishnet is a combination of different rogues that I've known, you know, over the years. You know, the people who would be willing to take a chance and, you know, do things that are very, very unorthodox. And then, you know, it's like anything else. People are people. You have selfish people. You have greedy people. You have envious people. And these are all motivating factors that get people to do the things that they do. And they're human. You know, I'm not saying that I'm not eulogizing or glorifying them. But, you know, I'd be lying to say that they don't exist. They do exist. And I try to tell a tale, you know, that's interesting. And I can't say it's factual. I mean, it's all fiction, but it's also possible.
You know, I want to point out, if you're a movie producer or you are a TV producer or anything, one of the things I find very interesting in both Tony Solano's books and Ginni Conquest books is they're very adaptable. They're adaptable to film. And you're very young, prolific authors. I'm going to call you undiscovered, you know, because I do believe neither of you have had your mega breakout moment that I think you're worthy of, and have the potential to be at those breakout moments. When you're writing, are you writing for yourself? Are you writing for a bigger picture? What inspires you to get up and tell these stories? Either one of you, go ahead, because I would love you to exchange this between the two of you. I think this could be an interesting discussion.
Well, for me, the first one, I just wanted to do something, you know, to keep myself busy. And then after I did the first one, I said, you know what, maybe I could make this into a series. Then I did the second one. And then after I did the second one, I said, it seems to come easy enough. So I said, well, maybe I could, if I could parlay maybe 6 or 7, you know, a bunch of these, maybe I could sell them to somebody, or somebody would have an interest in putting this on a screen. You know, it's funny you brought that up, because I just had a screenplay done with this fellow Glenn Taranto, who played Gomez on The Addams Family, and we're talking about, you know, I'm sitting with the producer and you know, one of these independent producers, and we're talking about trying to put this on the big on a screen, you know. But that's my story.
Ginni, what do you say?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I do it because I need that artistic outlet. I would go crazy because I'm not really singing anymore. That door closed many years ago. But I'm also doing it for the readers as a wonderful escape. My first book was actually came about from a dream that I had, and I was encouraged by an agent that used to work at Wilhelmina. When I told her about the dream, she said, you have to do something with that. And then all of a sudden I started thinking, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a romance novel. And A Love in Name Only was born. And then the second book I wrote, A Love Forever, came from that. I've put that aside for the Rockstar series. But from there, I've written second chance romances, I've written rom-coms, whatever feeling I'm in at that moment. And to kind of piggyback what Anthony was saying when he was trying, with character development, a lot of times I will walk around, even in a store, because I'm not really thinking about it, looking like I'm talking to myself, going back and forth with the dialogue to see if it fits naturally, because it has to be a natural flowing conversation. It can't be stilted or one-sided, because then the believability is gone. I wrote a Christmas book, Believe in It Will Happen, and that's perfect, I think, for like a Hallmark. Whatever moment I'm in, whatever feeling I'm in, that's the kind of writing that I do. But right now, I need to be focused on the Rockstar romance series. That's my first love now.
How do you go about explaining? You're both married. How do you go about explaining your characters to your spouses? Do they ever wonder about your characters you create and ask you questions like, what didn't I know about you? Or where did you come up with this? Because it's very imaginative. No. Not to put you both on the spot, but this is TV. We are looking for ratings.
Okay. We'll give you some ratings.
No, I'm just curious.
No. I think my husband, Bob, kind of hopes that none of these guys are modeled after him. And actually, to be all honest, sorry, Bob, you're going to see this, they're not. No, I don't want to share that part of my life with anyone. These are purely my, maybe, my dream guys, if you want to say that, or maybe the reader's dream guy. It's whatever you want those characters to be. But Bob knows that I write this. He does support me in the writing of these books. He's read 1 or 2 chapters of Unlawful Love, which is my MC to those out there, motorcycle club romance. And he's like, where are you getting these ideas from? And that was pretty much the end. He's more autobiographer, historian, World War I, II, Vietnam. Those are the books that he loves to read. So romance is not his thing. So,
What do you say, Anthony?
Well, I tell you, that was something I never figured on. Writing these books, I never thought I would be questioned as to where this came from. Because I was never the kind of guy that took my work home. I never spoke about, what went on at work, or regardless of what it was, good or bad, or, So I never was one to engage in war stories, when I went home. Now after these books started coming out, now I find out a lot of friends, the wives of a lot of friends of mine ask my wife, how do you live with him? How could you lay your head on a pillow, and hope you're going to wake up next day? But that's, I never gave it much thought, but I guess, that's just the way it is. You're right about what you know.
Exactly.
And if you know it, you understand it, and if you experienced it, it comes relatively easy. Of course, if you have that touch of creativity, that makes it a lot easier. Listening to Ginni, I'm thinking as you're speaking, I'm thinking of you, and I'm thinking of a woman in your position hiring models, and I'm thinking of 3 girls that go to your place, and 2 of them make the cut and 1 doesn't. The one that doesn't is now after you because.
Here's a storyline.
Because you canceled her.
Here's a storyline. Now you're getting me scared.
But this is what fascinates me, how, I'm always focused on perceptions of people, how the thoughts merge with beliefs that become the operating systems, which is largely the theme of this newly launched podcast. And character development is very big in that. What you're picking up on people. Because I would describe you both as extremely perceptive people that, are really good at picking up on nuance in personalities, and you both do it subtly. Obviously you do it professionally. Let's say Ginni does it professionally. She's sizing people up. She's trying to decide, can I book this person? Could you be a model? And Anthony, you must have done this countless times, interviewing witnesses or criminals.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the perceptive aspects of your nature that you bring to the writing process?
Well, I think police work in general, it gives you like a very, very negative outlook on things. I mean, it just, you see a lot of things that aren't so great, and it sort of makes you a pessimistic person when it comes to when you're dealing with people. So you always have your antennas up. You're always a little leery of the motives of the people you're dealing with. And when you think like that, you just kind of know. It's like a sixth sense. You know when somebody is selling you a bill of goods. You know that this isn't the right wife for your son, or this isn't the right boy for your daughter. You just kind of know because you're suspicious by nature, and you're basically looking for telltale signs that could be problematic without conveying that you're looking at those signs. If that makes sense to you.
No, that does make a lot of sense. Where do you think your perceptive nature comes
from? Just from over the 4 decades I've been at Wilhelmina, interviewing girls, countless, thousands of girls over my career, and just being kind about letting them down. If they're not, you just know when a girl comes in, you're looking for that diamond in the rough, right? And you just know if somebody has it, they might have it, you have to bring it out, or definitely, I'm sorry, you have no business. It's just not going to happen. And it's sad because those are those people's dreams. And I hate to be the crusher of dreams. My hashtag is, we make dreams happen, And so I think I've, over the years, been able to pick out who's going to be beneficial for the agency, who is not going to be beneficial, and it's just a way of letting those women know. It's just how you speak to them with a form of kindness, and that's how basically I go about it. Now I'm telling my secrets as an agent out there to all the young agents, but from doing this for so long, I just pretty much know when I see somebody.
Yeah. That's quite a contrast, from the way I would look at things, because I know I got used to conveying bad news, negative news to people. That's not easy, to tell somebody that they lost a child or their son got murdered. It's a little, it's difficult, but you get used to it like anything else. I mean, and you get better at it, for lack of a better word. I mean, you get better at it. And you're able to convey negative stuff, without, in the best possible way. And, very rarely in police work do you really have great news to convey to somebody.
Right.
Yeah, your son was shot, but he's going to live. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, what's not? I mean, it's nice that he's going to live, but it's also terrible news,
Right.
To receive. And that's kind of the world. And when you compare that to civilian life, to somebody who doesn't have to do that, it's really hard to tell people some negative things. And I understand Ginni's feeling on that. That's not easy. You don't want to displease people. It's like writing your books. You don't want to displease anyone. You want to please people. You want them to enjoy themselves. You don't want them to hurt anybody's feelings. And when it gets back to you that they did enjoy it, that there's nothing more rewarding than that. I mean, it transcends money and anything else that comes with it. It's just a good feeling, but particularly at this stage of the game.
Well, it makes it all.
That's such an interesting segue. Go ahead.
Yeah, it just makes it all worthwhile because it's time. What Anthony and I and so many authors do, it's time, it's money, it's angst. It's like your book, you're really happy with it, and then it goes to your editor and proofreader, and then they get on the phone with you and say, I'm hacking this, you got to do this. And I'm like, I just spent like months on this thing, and now I'm in the middle of rewrites. But it's all for the better purpose. So when I have a great review that comes out on Amazon, I'm sure Anthony feels the same way. It's all worthwhile. When you know you've reached a reader and now they like you and now they're looking into your other books, it's a great feeling.
It's so funny when you mention the editing process. My friend Judy Katz, who's been on this show before, we met when I was 21, and she's ghostwritten 55 books, but going back probably would have been about 30 years ago, I had written my first business book, and I was so proud of it. And I showed it to her, and it came back, and I swear it looked like O.J. Simpson had been there. You know, and they had used my book to mop up all the blood. You know, she had used this red Sharpie. I don't think I talked to her for 2 weeks. Could have been 2 months. I was so upset. The editing process, I tell people all the time, and I can't write a fiction book. I don't know how somebody starts a fiction book. I don't have that capacity to invent a character really, or one maybe, two maybe, but to get them to intertwine into a story, it's such an interesting brain space that someone can do that. But before we get into that, I really want to talk about the editing process, because there's writing and then there's editing. And when people want to write books, they ask me for advice, I try to say, just remember there are two different processes. Get as much as you can on paper as a writer, and then go back and edit. But you could get stuck for an hour rewriting your first sentence, you know, and the whole hour's over. So what do you think? I'd be curious about the writing process and editing and how you try to separate them, both of you.
Well, for me, I love writing prologues. Every one of my books has it, and I find that's the easiest segue into chapter 1. Now that I said that, I've been stuck on chapter 1 for about 3 months right now. And I really have to get serious because I have a book signing in June and I want the 3rd book out. The cover's been shot. But listen, I know my editor, proofreader, she's going to like attack it with, you know, with her computer, and that's fine. She brings out the best in me. I found someone that I really trust with my writing, and I think that's important, you know, for an author, that you trust the person. They have your best interest, because they're editing a lot of people's books, a lot of different genres jumping around. So you want that person to be into your style of writing. So this will be, I guess, the 5th book she'll be editing for me. So it's coming, Rose, it's coming.
Yeah, I find editing is an interesting thing because, you know, there's one thing about, you know, taking care of the punctuation and the tenses, and that's part of it. But there's another thing when they start changing the content.
Right.
Now, if
It's
I,
personal.
well, it gets personal in a way because the person who's doing the editing doesn't understand the character that you're writing about. Now, if I'm writing about mobsters, you can forget about politically correct. You know, I don't need you to tell me I can't use the term nervous Nelly
Right.
because some gangster uses it. I mean, now we've reached the preposterous, you know. And I think that is a little bit... It's tough to navigate that water because you don't want to offend the editor either.
Right.
But quite frankly, half the editors they just got off the boat. I mean, you know, they don't quite understand the flavor of the character that you created. Now, I'm sure when Ginni, when you create a character and that character says something, you've heard that from a person like that.
Correct, yes.
You know, so it's coming from a real place.
Yes.
You don't need your language corrected.
No.
Yeah.
You know, and I find that is my only thing with the editor. So the editor went by, for me, the editor went by way of lumbago. You know, doesn't exist anymore.
You know, that is so funny because when I obviously I wrote business books. When I started to write more personal stuff was when I started to blog every day, which I think I'm in my 8th year. And people say, wow, when they meet me, they say, you write just like you speak. And I'm like, is that a compliment or not? You know, I've been trying to break that Long Island accent for years, so hopefully it's not that part. But, you know, it's the tone, it's how you express a story, it's where you would accent something. And I think what we're talking about is this right now, you know, when someone takes your character or your message and you've really thought about it, or they want to move this paragraph up here.
Yes.
You know, or this part of the story here, which is interesting that you say you start with your prologue.
All the time. I love that. It just sets the whole tone for me and makes the process a little bit easier. But yeah, she'll come back with me and saying, Jen, I don't understand this part, where you're going with this, because sometimes, like you said, I write like I speak, and sometimes I'm like, because I'm afraid I'm going to forget something, so I want to get everything out.
Yep.
And then when you look at it, you're like, what the heck is she talking about? But if you know me, you love me, and and you get where I'm coming from. But no, in reality, that's where, she steps in and reins me back in. So I appreciate her.
Well, it's real too.
It's real.
The words that you're using, they're real because you've heard them, you've used them. And to turn them into something that's unreal is not good. I mean, and sometimes you have to just stand firm, on what you have. I mean, that's the way I write. I mean, that's the way I feel.
And you do have intense characters. Like you've got the mobsters in there.
Oh, yeah.
That, there are a few characters that I've read in your books, Tony, where I can feel, that feeling on my neck start to go up when that person's back in the chapter again.
Yeah. Well, they're scary characters, and they're killers. I mean, they're not altar boys. I mean, they're not nice, and you can't convey them as nice. I mean, let's face it, it's not Shakespeare. This isn't Dickens that's writing this. I mean, you're telling a tale of an element that's vulgar, crude, but not to say unintelligent. Not to say that they aren't intelligent.
Oh,
because they are.
Intelligence
some of these guys
comes
are
through
very.
A lot of times in
some
your
of these guys
books.
are very intelligent.
Yeah.
And if they haven't had the opportunities that some of us have had, but that doesn't mean that they're not smart and they're not cunning and capable. And the only one who could convey that is the author, because you have that experience, you have that feel, and you can convey that. To have that tampered with, I don't see that as a good formula, because you'll lose credibility. How are you, sir, is never going to be said by some major gangster.
No, it's not.
That's just not going to, it's not
Or not without a lot of sarcasm. It's funny. You bring in characters that I can feel the tension. You bring in characters that bring in the tingle.
Oh, okay. Well, then I did my job.
Yes.
Totally different than Tony. I have to read one of your books, but I think I'll have to keep the light on all night, after I finish.
You could take one home with you.
Okay, I would love to read it. But yeah, I think from a romance writer's perspective, it's a little bit more entertaining, and it's a way to get lost. It's a vacation. Take a vacation with one of my books, or take it on vacation, But yeah, it's pure entertainment and an escape. So.
Yeah.
Where do you envision these characters? Do you want to keep your characters going? How do you put a character to bed? Like, how do you say no more for this character? That to me seems painful.
It's heartbreaking for me, because I feel like every time I finish writing, I break up with somebody. All right. I feel like it's a broken relationship. I will eventually go back to books 1 and 2 and bring Gregory back. He was my first love.
It was Gregory Steele, right?
Yeah, Gregory. Very good. Very good. Yeah, he was
a memorable guy.
He's good. And then with the Rockstar Romance series, each book has to do with one of the guys in the book. So right now, book 3 focuses on the singer of the band, but all the guys are in it, all the girls are in it. So I've got like 20 character voices through my head, adding in the manager, the PR person. It's not just 6 and 6. It's a lot. And as those books go on, the guys are getting older, the girls are getting older, and I know what I'm doing for the 6th book. It'll be a new generational thing. And then whether or not I continue with Song of the Heart series part 2, the new generation, I don't know. We'll see when we get there. But I think this book series is going to wear me out by the time I'm done with it.
It'll keep you going.
It'll keep me
you
good.
going.
Now, Tony, you have had the Sergeant Markey series, but the last time we talked in person, you told me about a very different style book you were writing that is coming soon.
Yeah.
Where you took the female's perspective as the author.
Yeah, what happened with that was that my character's female, this Fishnet Milligan that I had, a rogue, over 6 books, he got worse and worse and worse and worse until finally you kind of run out of ideas on how much worse he could be. I mean, and so something had to be done, so he was killed off. And, when he was killed off, I had somebody tell me, says, gee, I thought he would have suffered more.
Oh.
I thought, what do we do, boil him in oil? I mean, Anyway, so now you have to come up with something a little different. And what I did was I kind of looked at a couple of things. And the 7th book has to do with I don't want to say a romance novel. This would be a stretch. But it's about a very vulnerable woman who has a number of bad experiences with men. And she turns to her diary and she records these in her diary. And as she does this, she keeps getting her heart broken, and finally she's fragile, and finally she commits suicide. And that suicide is the basis for revenge, where her father finds this diary, and he knows his daughter's heart was broken, and he doesn't know which guy exactly was the one that put her over. So he decides he's going to kill them all. And to do this, he has to recruit help, because he's not a killer. He has to recruit somebody to do his dirty work. So it takes a little conniving and scheming. So that's a little different, in that one. And then this one I'm working on now, the 8th one, I'm halfway through it. It has to do with a family business. The treachery that could be involved when you're talking money and funds and seizing control. So that's what I'm up to.
Oh, those are good angles. When does your next one come out?
I'm hoping it comes out this month.
Wow.
It's with the publisher now, so hopefully it'll be out there.
I'm really, Ginni, when I think of your books, I'm really waiting for that Hallmark Christmas story.
Yeah, well, I wish they'd call me. I'm here. You can find me. But yeah, that would just be wonderful. Because that storyline that started that book actually happened to me with my little niece, who now is in her 30s. And yeah, I don't know if I should tell the story, but now that I opened up Pandora's box, right? But
you all might want to read it, because she just admitted it kind of is based on some truth.
Yeah, just the opening part, and then the rest of it is all fictional. So, but it's a real, it's like a second chance holiday romance, and just very sweet and very, Hallmark, very, I think it'd be perfect for them. So, you can get me through Dian Griesel. Or on
Absolutely. What do you find the challenges are being an author? How do you balance your time with writing, your time with other obligations, careers, building out the storyline? How do you balance your time during the day to keep those books moving so you're enthusiastic through the process?
It's difficult to juggle, because not only am I still working full-time at Wilhelmina, I'm very blessed.
Very full-time.
Yeah, very full-time and into the evenings and some weekends. But just being able to work from home for 4 days and in the office 1 day, I'm very blessed for that. So I'm juggling that. My husband, 2 basset hounds, my church group that I've been president of for the last 23 years. And that's a lot of fundraising and everything for my parish. Gee, what else? I don't know. I think that's a lot. Yeah, to be able to juggle, I usually try to write in the evenings, and on an occasional weekend, if I could slip it in when I'm not doing house chores, or we have to do something else, or a family commitment. So it's a lot of juggling, but we make it work.
And Tony, you've got a family. You're the ultimate networker I think I've ever met. You're always out there doing stuff. How do you balance it? What's your day like? Do you get up and say, I'm going to write from now to now, or what did you do?
I write when I get up in the morning, and then I can get up 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30. Sometimes I get up really early. And I find that at that time I'm most creative. I could think up characters, I can think up storylines. And so I'll do that for a couple of hours, and then that's it. Then that's it. I'll do whatever I want to do for the rest of the day. And maybe before I go to bed, I'll go back at what I wrote and I'll clean it up, you know, embellish on it, add to it, take away, make it pretty. And that's the way I do it. And I find that it's not too strenuous. You know, physically, it's not I'm locked into a chair for so many hours. And I find it works, you know. Now, that was a process. That didn't happen overnight. You know, I learned the hard way after the first couple of books, you know, and then I realized, okay, this is my sweet spot. When I wake up, that's when I'm the sharpest at this, and that's what I do.
You know, it's really interesting you say that, because I always try to get up earlier than anyone else in our household, because it's my head's sharp, it's clear, there's no interruptions, I don't look at email.
That's true.
You know, it's just like, what's the first thought that comes to my head? What can I write about? What am I thinking about? What did I observe yesterday that somehow percolated in my subconscious over the night?
Right.
You know, because it's really fascinating. And, you know, my mother used to say when we were growing up, if you have a problem, Diane, sleep on it. You know, let your mind work on it overnight. And I know that helps me a lot with my writing. Do you find you have, like, times you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to keep that pad next to your bed, or you want to write first thing in the morning because something about a character or how that plot unfolds just hits you in the middle of the night?
Mornings aren't good for me.
They're not.
No. I
Well,
wrote.
probably because you've got so many demands.
Yeah,
first
no,
thing in the
morning, I don't even think about that.
Really?
Sometimes for me, writing late at night has been great. I finished a book writing 3 a.m.
Really?
Yes, yeah, Love Never Fails was done at 3 a.m.
Wow.
And that's just, I don't know, I'm a night owl, I guess. But having to say that, I'm going to contradict myself, because book one of my very first book, I wrote on my iPhone 4 on my commute to and from New York. So
I
that's
can't
what
imagine.
I did. I wrote it in the notes, and then I would email the notes to my email, because sometimes I'd be so afraid that the notes would disappear. But I had an hour and a half on the train, going and coming, and I would just write out, and then I would show my friend on the train, and I'd let her read what I just wrote, and she's like, Jen, I got to go to work, you know, I can't get like this, like crazy, you know, with the book. But yeah, but that's what I did. My first book I wrote on my iPhone 4.
So you're like our kids.
No,
You can-
no,
you
I
can do
I
the
don't
two
do.
thumbs?
No, forget that. I go like this. If I'm like this.
Okay, that's a shout out to Chamonix.
Yeah, I'm like this. I can't do the two thumb things. That's no way in hell.
I'll start texting something, and either one of our kids will say, Mom, seriously, you have got to learn how to use your thumbs. And because
No,
I'm like,
I've never
1, 2.
done that. Never done that. But I can go real fast.
That's
I can
unbelievable.
go real fast. So
Too funny.
Yeah, I have sometimes middle of the night creative ideas, and that'll prompt me to get up and take notes. Just write things down on a piece of paper so I remember when I get up to do it. You know, the problem with those middle of the night wake ups and you know, where you don't get enough sleep, is you find yourself at the computer and you're typing away and you end up falling asleep. You know, I was once typing something. And I was tired, you know, because I'd gotten up, I didn't get much sleep, and I had my finger on the letter X, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, I had 40 pages of X's
No.
on the computer. The
Oh
goddamn
my
truth.
God,
knew he
that's
was gonna say that.
That's a true story. That was a true story.
gonna say that.
Okay, that is really funny.
That's in one of the books. I don't know which one, but I put
You added it in
one of
there.
the
See,
books.
that was what you woke up for.
Yeah,
that
I
needed to be
guess.
there, right?
I think I'm going to have to take this footage and send it to somebody who can break down the little 6-second, because that could go viral on
Yeah.
TikTok. So I fell asleep and my whole pages were
Could you
X's.
imagine?
All X's.
Oh my
Funny.
gosh.
That's very funny.
Yeah. You know, yeah, those middle of the night thoughts always,
You know.
those are tough. But the getting up in the morning, I definitely find the clarity. Do you find when you're having a conversation with someone, I know for me, I could be walking on the street or I'm having a conversation and someone will say something, and in that split second, I'm like, okay, that's my blog for tomorrow. I know exactly what I want to write about. Do you find when you're having subtexts in your head while people are talking about, oh, my character would say something like that, or oh, I can imagine working that into the story somehow?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could get an idea sometimes if I see somebody cut somebody off in traffic, and then they start, waving fists at each other. To me, that's a story. Matter of fact, I opened up one of my books with a similar story like that, where a motorist, got into something with somebody, but it was the basis of I was able to incorporate that into the story I was telling. Everything. I mean, it could be somebody who waits on you in a restaurant. It could be just the behavior of somebody that the way they walk, or the way they talk, or the way they, just conduct themselves, or maybe the way they interact with their spouses. These are all things that you could build upon. These are building blocks.
When you talk about incorporating things into your stories, have you had any of your friends or charities ask to get included in your stories? Could you add me as a character kind of thing?
Well, I tell you the truth, I did do, a friend of mine is an attorney, and he's a good guy, and I called him up and I said, would you like, I don't know if he asked me or I offered to do it. I probably offered to do it. And I said, would you like me to incorporate you in, one of the books? I have a piece for a lawyer I could put you in, and and he said, yeah, do it. And I did, and I put him in 2 books. So he was very happy, to be memorialized, I guess, in some kind of fashion like that.
And I have 2 gay friends, lovely, and they, I told them if it was all right, I modeled 2 characters after them, and they just loved the idea. So when the book Desire's Way came out, one of the guys worked with me at Wilhelmina, and when he saw that it came out, he called me on my extension and started screaming. I was like, because the character loved to eat. He was a chef. He had his own catering business, and this person loved to eat. It was all about food for him all the time. But that's my rom-com. So that book was, very funny from that standpoint. But I also put in things that have personally happened to me. So every book that I write has something that has happened to me, and I leave it up to my reader to decide what that particular scene is. So,
because I always got a kick out of the Stuart Woods books, that he would write about Tudor City, where he had the main character. I don't know why I can't think of his name. Would have a home in Tudor City, but he also had one in Washington, Connecticut, which we had lived in at a time, and not too many people. But he talked about the Rossiter mansions there, which we used to drive by because they were so unique. And then he would tie Elaine from Elaine's into the stories, because that's where they would go have their dinners. So it's fun to be. It's a great charity thing. I'm sure there's lots of charities that would just love to auction off it be included in one of your novels. I hate to say this. We are at the end of this episode. Time just goes too fast. I got the 5-minute sign a second ago. So thank you, Josh. And really, I'm Dian Griesel. This has been the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. And Ginni, Anthony, do you have any last things you want to say? Inspiring other authors, maybe.
That's the greatest thing in the world. I do these lunches, as you know, Diane, and we do, it's called the Authors Wordsmith Networking Lunches, where we bring business people and authors and people who maybe have a book in them, but they don't know how to quite get it out there. And we got 7 people published, as a result of this. All it took was a little bit of hand-holding, walking them through it, and they got a great story. Matter of fact, my friend Lenny's book, I'm going to give it to you when I see you next week, Diane. It's really a great read, and it's a great story that he has to tell, a business tale. That's the greatest feeling in the world, because, you've done something for somebody, and, that maybe you didn't have somebody help you. But it's okay. It's a good feeling to help somebody else, on a journey that's doable.
Yeah.
And it's not as challenging as what it may seem to be, to most people.
and I would just say go for it. If there's anybody out there thinking of publishing a book of poetry, short story, fiction, nonfiction, romance, murder, mystery, whatever, just go for it. Go for your dream. You just never know where you're going to end up. And that would just be my words of wisdom. Don't be afraid. Just take that leap of faith. So,
yeah.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this tremendously. Everyone, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. I'm Dian Griesel. My guests have been Ginni Conquest and Anthony Solano. They are both prolific authors. In the notes below this podcast, so besides watching it or listening to it, please scroll down and do see the notes. There are going to be lots of links to their author pages so you can easily pick up their books. So thank you very much. You know what? Do me a favor. Hit subscribe, because there's lots of great content in past episodes. You can see one-on-ones with both Ginni and Anthony, one-on-one interviews that we've done in the past. And there's lots of great future content coming. So thank you very much for tuning in. Please hit subscribe. And thank you, Manhattan Center.